Your quiet is not meaningless. It's not pointless. Your quietness is actually attempting to communicate with you. Have you noticed that we rush to fill the void in life whenever it becomes quiet? We switch the radio on. Our talk begins. We blow a whistle. We hum. We claim to be bored. However, what we truly mean is that we are scared. Because if you listen carefully, quiet is not absence. It's there. It's a mirror reflecting what you've been avoiding. And that stillness becomes your best instructor if you pay attention to it. Why do we run away from quiet? Because there is no amusement, no distraction, and no applause when there is stillness. You're the only one. You see, a lot of individuals are unable to sit with themselves. They are afraid of their own company. Their thoughts start racing. Memories come to mind. Old concerns resurface. So, in an attempt to block it out, they seek other sounds, conversation, music, movement, anything. However, it is precisely because of this avoidance that life feels restless. Because being silent is not a bad thing. Everything rests on the foundation of silence. There wouldn't be any music, thoughts, or life's rhythm if there wasn't silence. It is important to keep in mind that silence is the frame of sound, not its antithesis. The music would be intolerable without pauses. Words would become noise if there was no room. Similarly, life itself becomes shallow in the absence of silence. But we fight against it. Why? Because we are not flatteringly silenced. The appearance of control does not reassure us. Though not in the way we anticipate, it does communicate. It communicates through presence, silence, and the things we tend to avoid the most. This explains why listening transforms everything and why your quietness is attempting to communicate with you. Imagine the evening when everything has been finished for the day and all of a sudden there is silence. You initially notice the commonplace, such as your own breathing, the rustle of the trees, and the ticking of clock. Then, however, something more profound emerges. Your mind is racing, and all of the anxieties you've suppressed start to come back to haunt you. Yes, it can be uncomfortable, but that's exactly what it's supposed to feel like. Because those anxieties are not sparked by silence. It just makes them visible. They were hidden by noise. They are apparent when there is silence. And you can only start to comprehend them after they are apparent. You know, silence is seen with suspicion in our culture. When you enter a room and nobody is talking, people start to feel uncomfortable. They have to infuse the atmosphere with conversation, viewpoints, and tales. There is usually music playing, announcements, or the hum of engines in public areas. We seem to be working together to prevent silence. Why? Because the truth is revealed in silence. And it's a disturbing truth that we're transient, that we are unaware of, that solid ground does not exist. Nevertheless, tranquility can be found just here. We avoid silence because we fear realizing we are sufficient. People keep themselves constantly busy not because they enjoy their work, but rather because they are afraid that if everything stopped, if the activity and the noise stopped, they would find nothing worthwhile inside. However, if you sit quietly for a long enough period of time, you will find something remarkable. There is nothing empty about silence. It's completely filled. It's living. It whispers things you can't hear above noise, and it is the basis of life itself. Think about the symphony. The pauses in between the instruments are just as wonderful as the instruments themselves. The lack of music is not the cause of the quiet. It is what lends the song its structure and significance. And the same is true in life. Silence is the space that allows life to exist, not the lack of it. However, we handle it as though it were a nothingness that should be feared. We rush to fill it, to get out of it, to hide it. And we lose its gift in the process. Its wisdom is missed. The basic foundation of peace is what we miss. It can be like peering into space when there is silence. It is a void, to be sure, but a productive one. Stars are created from the same emptiness, the same quiet that underpins the seasons, the same void in which the planets move. Finally, in solitude, you may hear the more subdued rhythms of life, such as your heartbeat, breath pace, and thoughts changing. Additionally, you start to sense something bigger than yourself if you listen even more intently. The planet is held in immense quiet. a quietness that has never left you. We don't trust it, which is the problem. We believe that life is being wasted if we are not talking, working, or generating. Silence, however, is never a waste. It is the most important factor, because the mind can only rest in silence. The only way for the heart to mend is in solitude. The soul awakens only when there is silence. This doesn't have to be forced. All you have to do is let it. But it takes bravery to give in. The guts not to reach for the next distraction, to sit, to halt, to just be. And maybe quiet is trying to tell you this, that you are profoundly a part of life rather than separate from it, that you belong in your silence, that you don't have to continue demonstrating, creating, or acting. You learn in silence that you are sufficient simply by virtue of your existence, not because of anything you have accomplished. And wisdom starts with that realization. It's liberty. Peace prevails. But amid the never-ending cacophony, you will never discover it. Only when you have the courage to let stillness to speak will you discover it. Something interesting occurs when you remain silent. Your thoughts come flooding in at first. They beg to be noticed. And unresolved issues, anxieties, regrets, and plans, you want to get away. However, the storm starts to subside if you remain and allow silence to persist for a little while longer. Thoughts become less urgent. Feelings become softer. And below it all is something stable, something immobile. Silence exposes a quiet at the heart of who you are, like the serene depth underneath the ocean's waves. This silence is not created. Rather, it is found. And it's in this silence that you start to realize the true nature of existence. Not as your anxious thoughts depict it, not as your anxieties depict it, but as it truly plays out one moment at a time. The warmth of the sun, the breeze in the trees, and the ticking of a clock. When you are silent enough to observe them, these seemingly insignificant details become astounding. The ordinary becomes remarkable in silence. It demonstrates how frequently what you are looking for is what you are overlooking. But you have to be motionless to perceive it. We don't learn this from our society. It instructs us to occupy every available space with action, conversation, and preparation. It is believed that a man who sits quietly is wasting his time. The great irony is that we are most intimately connected to the essence of life when we are silent. If you speak louder than the bird, you won't be able to hear it singing. If you are always drowning in activities, you will never be able to sense the mystery of life. If you accept the invitation of silence, you will find that you are always a part of life. Silence is the language of the Tao, according to a Zen adage. Everything else is a bad translation. What does that signify? It implies that the very nature of reality is not verbal. It doesn't say anything. Words have limitations, but they are useful. They describe things and point to them, but they're never the thing. But the thing itself is silence. It is the direct exchange of ideas between beings. You come to understand that silence has always been speaking once you experience this. We just haven't been paying attention. Because nothing is happening, some people believe that silence is meaningless. However, if you sit for a long enough period of time, you'll see that life is blending with quiet. Silence now also exposes what we do not wish to acknowledge. We avoid it because it exposes our vulnerabilities, loneliness, and doubts. But its gift is right here. Silence reveals the hidden, and the hidden can be healed at last. You bury your concerns deeper when you avoid silence. They rise when you listen. Even if it hurts, transformation starts with that suffering. Silence is honest, you see. It's not flattering. It doesn't divert attention. It presents you with reality. And this honesty is too much for most people to handle. They choose the comforting falsehoods of loudness and the continual diversion. However, honesty becomes light after initially being heavy. Therefore, keep in mind that silence is not to blame when you experience restlessness or the inability to sit motionless. Silence is attempting to convey a message to you. It is saying, look here, this is the place where you hurt. This is the place you have ignored. And if you stay long enough, if you breathe through it, you will discover that the burden lifts. What once felt unbearable becomes bearable. What once felt frightening becomes familiar. And what once felt like emptiness reveals itself as fullness. The great philosophers, the mystics, the sages, they all returned to silence. Not because they were dull men with nothing to say, but because they recognized that silence says everything. The stars speak in silence. The ocean speaks in silence. Birth and death themselves are surrounded by silence. If you would understand life, you must stop filling every gap. You must let silence speak. And when you do, you will realize that silence is not an interruption of your life. Silence is your life revealed in its purest form. So perhaps your silence is telling you this. Stop running. Stop filling. Stop pretending. Listen, for silence is not trying to frighten you. It is trying to free you. It wants to show you that you're not your fears, not your thoughts, not your endless striving. You are the space in which all of this arises. You are the silence itself. And if you can see that, even for a moment, the burden drops. Life is no longer a frantic chase. It is simply here in this breath, in this silence, waiting for you to notice. Now, there is something marvelous about silence that few ever discover. Once you have settled beyond the first restlessness, once you have faced the discomfort of your own mind, silence begins to change character. It is no longer heavy, no longer frightening. It becomes alive. It begins to speak not with words, but with impressions, with intimations, with sudden insights. Out of silence comes intuition, that quiet sense that you know without knowing how you know. And this intuition you see is the voice of life itself moving through you. In silence, the mind is not pushing, not straining, not calculating. It is receptive. And in this receptivity, ideas arrive unbidden. Have you noticed that your best thoughts rarely come when you are forcing them? They come when you're walking in the woods, when you're gazing at the sea, when you're sitting quietly and not trying. This is the secret. Creativity is not produced by effort alone. It is born of silence. Silence is the womb of creation, the place where the fragments of experience arrange themselves into sudden clarity. The poets have always known this. They retreat into solitude, and there out of the stillness words flow as if from another world. The scientist, too, after wrestling with a problem, finds that the solution appears not in the struggle, but in the quiet moment afterward. Sometimes in a dream, sometimes in the bath, sometimes in an idle gaze. This is the magic of silence. It is the space where the conscious mind loosens its grip and the deeper intelligence of life itself begins to work. Silence is not empty. It is pregnant. We may even call it magical, though not in the sense of spells and charms. It is magic in the sense that something larger than your will, something deeper than your plans begins to operate. You could say it is the universe breathing ideas into you. Intuition, inspiration, imagination, these are not created by you. They arrive through you. And for them to arrive, there must be space. Silence is that space. Without it, the constant clatter of thought drowns out the subtler music. With it, the whole symphony of life can be heard. This is why some of the greatest discoveries and works of art came not from constant struggle, but from stillness. A man sits beneath a tree, and the law of gravity reveals itself. A painter stares at an empty canvas in silence, and suddenly the vision appears. A composer listens to the quiet, and the melody begins to flow. It is not that silence gives you what you demand, but that silence allows what is already waiting to emerge. And when it emerges, it feels less like invention and more like revelation. Here we touch on something even deeper. What many people call manifestation is simply the natural flowering of this silence. For in silence, you are no longer fighting reality. You are open. And in openness, life aligns with you. The right ideas come, the right people appear, the right paths unfold, not because you force them, but because you were still enough to receive them. The man who never sits in silence is forever chasing, grasping, scheming. But the man who listens finds that what he was seeking comes to meet him. Now, do not misunderstand me. I'm not saying you should do nothing at all. The farmer still tills the soil. The artist still lifts the brush. The sailor still sets the sail. But what gives power to their work is not the restless effort, but the deep intuition that arises only in quiet. Without silence, their actions are mechanical, frantic. With silence, their actions are aligned, graceful, even magical. This is the paradox. The less you force, the more life flows. And the key to this paradox is silence. The sages of India call it shunted, the fertile emptiness. The Taoists call it will action through non-forcing. Whatever the name, the truth is the same. Silence is not absence, but presence. It is the presence of life unclouded by your interference. And when you touch this, something extraordinary happens. You realize that you are not the separate doer you imagined yourself to be. You are a participant in a vast unfolding. And silence is the place where you align with that unfolding. From silence comes the wisdom of when to act and when to wait. This is why if you want to live creatively, if you want to live wisely, you must learn to be silent. Not always, not forever, but regularly, intentionally sit quietly. Walk in the woods. Listen to the birds without naming them. Let the silence seep into you. At first, it will reveal your restlessness. Then it will reveal your fears. And if you remain, it will reveal your intuition. It will reveal the magic you could not summon by effort. And in that magic, life begins to flow through you instead of against you. So your silence is not merely a rest. It is not merely a pause between words. It is the very source of your deepest knowing. It is the well from which creativity springs, the soil in which ideas grow, the doorway through which life itself moves toward you. And perhaps this is what silence is trying to tell you. Stop struggling. Be still. Let me show you. For in the end, it is not you who must make everything happen. It is silence that makes room for life to reveal itself through you. So then, silence is not a void to be feared. It is the fertile ground of all things. Out of it comes music, words, wisdom, creativity, even love. When you are quiet, when you finally stop running, you discover that silence is not against you. It is for you. It is the universe's way of speaking without words, of guiding without maps. And the only question is whether you will listen. Because when you do listen, something magical happens. Intuition stirs. Creative ideas appear as if from nowhere. You begin to sense the right step, the right time, the right direction without effort, without calculation. You find that life itself is offering you hints, invitations, pathways. And this, you see, is what some call manifestation. Not the childish idea that you can simply demand what you want, but the deeper truth that when you are silent and open, life brings you what belongs to you. It does not give you everything, but it gives you what is needed. And that is why silence is such a profound teacher. It teaches you to trust that you do not need to chase after every answer, to trust that the universe knows how to move through you if only you will let it, to trust that you do not need to hold the rein so tightly. For silence is not empty. It is intelligent. It is full of patterns, rhythms, and wisdom far greater than our own small schemes. And in learning to listen, you are learning to live in harmony with that vast intelligence. So perhaps this is what your silence is telling you. Stop forcing, stop grasping, stop filling every space. Be still and see what emerges. For out of silence, whole worlds are born. Out of silence, the stars move, the flowers bloom, the heart beats. Out of silence, the great ideas come, the works of art, the flashes of inspiration. Out of silence, your very being arises. And if you can sit with it, even for a little while each day, you will begin to discover a freedom you never imagined possible. Freedom not from responsibility, but from the endless compulsion to control. Freedom not from pain, but from the fear of it. Freedom not from life, but from the constant running away from it. Silence says, here you are. This is enough. And when you believe that, truly believe it, you are free. Free to create, free to love, free to live without apology. Not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. That is the paradox. Silence feels at first like nothing, but it contains everything. And when you listen, you receive the whole. So the invitation, my friends, is simple. Make room for silence. Sit with it. Walk with it. Let it unsettle you. Let it speak. Do not fear its honesty, for its honesty is your liberation. Do not run from its depth, for its depth is your own. And when the noise of the world grows overwhelming, remember that silence is never far. It is within you, around you, and beneath everything. It has always been there, patiently waiting, trying to tell you something. The only question left is, will you listen?